My name is Yana Abu Taleb. I am Jordanian co-director of EcoPeace Middle East.
And my name is Gidon Bromberg, and I'm the Israeli co-director of EcoPeace Middle East. I think my story is a story that could inspire a lot of young people, because I really had the privilege of doing my master's degree, thinking deeply as to what could be a relevant thesis, and then trying to implement that thesis. And I hope that that can inspire many other young people to try to do the same. So I came back to live in Israel with the idea that I wanted to contribute to peace building, but I didn't really know how. And I stumbled across a new environmental organization that was just being established of lawyers for the environment in Israel. And I started volunteering for them. And at some point, I was offered to be suggested to do to get a scholarship for a master's in international environmental law at American University in Washington, D.C. And I was in Washington at a very opportune moment when the negotiations between Israel and Jordan were taking place, and Israel and the PLO were taking place. And I simply asked myself the question whether peace was going to be good for the environment. And as I did my research, I discovered that, well, really, environment is not on the peace agenda. That there was a little bit of lip service being given, but not beyond that. And as a conclusion of the research that I did, there was a suggestion that maybe a regional environmental NGO could be created that would be Israeli and Palestinian and Jordanian and Egyptian, and try to put environmental issues onto the peace agenda. And even before leaving Washington, I met with about a dozen people to ask them whether they would fund the first gathering ever of environmentalists from the region. And my story is that all of them threw me out the door very quickly, said, come back when you're a little bit older. But I'm persistent, and I wrote to them all. And one of them actually called me when I got back to Israel and said, you know what? If you can organize it, I will fund it. And within several months, in December 1994, that meeting took place in Taba in Egypt. And on the second day of the meeting, the decision to create EcoPeace Middle East happened. And here we are, 25 years later, still the only regional organization that exists, sadly, in any field that is Jordanian, Palestinian, and Israeli together.
Well, my story is a bit different because, since I was a very little girl, I always felt that I have to contribute to a more peaceful world. And this is where it really all started. I studied archaeology, but I never practiced. But I was always wondering, how can I really make a difference, to the environment in the region, to bringing prosperity to people's lives, because I get to see how difficult it is for most of Jordanians and Palestinians as well. And that was the thought behind it. But then I was really introduced to EcoPeace, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this really exists. It's really there. I really want to become part of that wonderful team that is doing something very meaningful, because we really need to focus on a just peace in our region, not only on that political peace. The former Jordanian director asked me to come. There weren't any coordinator posts at that time. He asked me to, along with Gidon, to edit the newsletter that we were doing. So that's where it started, and my passion grew. With that, the first thing I worked on was the newsletter. Then I became the Jordanian Sustainable Tourism coordinator between Aqaba Eilat And from there, I started going up until I became Jordanian director. And I see myself that this is something I really want to keep on doing because, like I said, it's meaningful and we need it. Sadly, because at this time, it's the only regional organization that still exists that balances between environmental issues and peace-building issues, brings people together, focuses on educating those people, and we really need this, especially at this tough time that our region is going through. When I left EcoPeace for the first time in 2003, I moved on to Saudi Arabia. And I worked with the British Council as the country program manager for the education, basically, and we did global programs. And from there, I started really understanding and gaining the experience of the importance of working with the young people. You know, how they will change the future, how they are going to become our future leaders, and how it's all implemented and how it should all be planned. I worked there for about 2.5 years. And when I came back to EcoPeace, we did have an educational program, the Good Water Neighbors, working with the youth. And I started really focusing on, because I was a Jordanian project coordinator at that time, how we can really change things on ground with the youth that we are working with. And I used all the experience that I gained from there to implement on the Jordanian side, then moving to regionally. And I'm really happy that I was able to contribute to advancing our educational program at EcoPeace as well.
Water issues have rarely been the source of the conflict itself. The River Jordan has mostly been the victim of the conflict. You know, the conflict is a national conflict of the different national peoples that claim the same territory and are so stubborn in trying to reach compromise and live together peacefully. As a result of the conflict, given that water is so scarce in our region, each side tried to grab as much as the water that they could from the Jordan River system, partly for legitimate reasons, because water's scarce and you need water for your respective populations, for domestic purposes, for agriculture, for industry, but also to deny your enemy water, because water in the desert is power, means power, enables you to develop. And therefore, you know, in this case, Israel was first. Israel blocked the flow of the Sea of Galilee, of the Jordan River from the Sea of Galilee, diverting that water and bringing that water to the center of the country for the needs of the growing population of the Tel Aviv area. And then, you know, shortly afterwards, Syria starts building dams and Jordan builds its King Abdallah Canal and various dams. And very quickly, 95% of the waters that used to flow down the Jordan River are captured, are diverted. The river itself is the border, and therefore it's a danger zone. It becomes mined, it becomes fenced. There's military patrols along the river. And rather than fresh water flowing down the river, very quickly all the populations that live along the river valley start emitting their sewage, agricultural runoff into the river, and it becomes quite polluted. And then, as the years progress, after 1967, Palestinians lose complete access to the riverbank south of the Sea of Galilee. A military fence is built there, and communities, Palestinian communities that used to have access to the river, lose that access as well. So a lot of people have lost livelihood around the demise of the River Jordan?
So the Jordan River is important to the three Abrahamic religions, basically. It's important to Muslims because companions of Prophet Muhammad lived on the banks of the Jordan River, and their shrines are still there on the banks. It's important to Christianity because of the baptism of Jesus Christ, and important to Judaism because it's the crossing to the Promised Land. The religious people understand its religious significance, but they don't understand the demise that is really happening to the Jordan River. And this is where it was important to bring on the followers of the three faiths, basically, for them to understand that the Jordan River's demise is going to contribute negatively to all of us. Instead of really working together on saving that sacred river that's important to all of us, we are really contributing to its demise. It's losing all its water, it's being polluted. And this is where we saw the importance as EcoPeace to bring on the religious leaders, the congregations, to work with us to understand what's happening to the river so that they, in return, can help highlight to the decision makers that something has to happen. We must work together because it's holy to all of us. It's holy for the three religions, basically, to change what's going on in reality at this time.
One of the things that we did that was so important was to go beyond the blame game. Because generally, had you asked someone from the Israeli public, who's responsible for the demise of the Jordan, then they would say the Syrians and the Jordanians took it all. If you asked a Jordanian or a Palestinian or a Syrian, they'd say the Israelis took it all. One of the first studies that we undertook was a study bringing together Palestinian, Jordanian, and Israeli researchers to gain a common understanding of the river's demise. And there we very quickly saw that actually all peoples have contributed to its demise. Not equally, but nevertheless all of us have either had a role to play in taking the water out or to bring the sewerage in. And once we were able to show that broader perspective and have, again, important researchers from the three peoples, from the three countries speak to that, then we're able to build a picture of common ground. We're able to move beyond blame to a conversation of take responsibility. And that's where the religious community, the faith-based community are so important, because they come from a strong moral background. They come with a sense of responsibility. They come with a heritage that we're here as caretakers, as guardians. And clearly we've failed. This river, holy to half of humanity, has been heavily demised, despite the fact that it's holy to half of humanity. So it was a message that I think initially we were fearful to approach the religious communities, the faith-based communities, because there has been faith-based leaders in our respective countries that have added fire or have added wood to the fire in our conflict. And we were cautious, but we were very nicely surprised how quickly the religious communities in the three Abrahamic faiths came and understood and became active in our work calling for the rehabilitation of the river.
Well, there are many reasons to start with. Especially in our region, in the Middle East region, the conflict was, the basis of making people separated and thinking of only what's in it for each of them. So it wasn't the most important issue to be really addressing, like the environment, or I don't care what's happening on the other side. of the river, let's say. But realizing from work, again, concentrating on the work we do at EcoPeace, when we empower people with that piece of information, that if we are not able to cooperate, then we're all going to lose, especially when it comes to our scarce water resources, especially when it comes to a river that is shared and sacred and important as a water resource for all the three countries, then we're all going to lose. And highlighting what we will all gain from cooperating around it, basically. So people do understand at this time, although we still have a lot of setbacks, especially on the Jordanian and Palestinian sides, because you're talking about lack of sustainable development, that it needs to happen on the banks of the Jordan River, basically. But people do understand the importance of working together, cooperating, and understanding the link between ecology and how we can overcome our conflicts, basically.
I think there's been a real change in the traditions of the Abrahamic communities. Our textbooks, be it the Quran, be it the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Bible, are rich in text. And traditionally, we've chosen the wording that speak to putting humankind first. But our texts also put nature first. And I think that the change that we've seen over these last decades is the awareness that if you care, if you're a believer in your respective faith traditions, then you have a responsibility to be the caretaker of the planet. If God created the world, then you must respect the planet that she created. And I think that has taken time to develop. The wordings were always there in the text, but the interpretations were very much focused on humankind, particularly man, dominating the earth. That the earth was given so that man could dominate it. And I think what we've seen over these last 50 years is that interpretation, that ideology has had horrible effects. And we've devastated so much of this planet because of that narrow interpretation. And thankfully, there's been religious leadership in all of the three Abrahamic faiths that have come to reinterpret and look back at the text and find indeed deep, meaningful language that describes us as guardians, as caretakers. And that enables the religious community, the faith-based leadership to play that critical role of educating the broader public, of bringing back the importance of place, the importance of water, the importance of a river to our own spirituality.
We wanted to highlight these important challenges that we are facing in our region. Yes, it's not easy. Our politicians, especially when you're talking to the Jordanians or the Palestinians about the rehabilitation of the Jordan River, they would tell us, oh my God, what are you thinking? We hardly can meet our drinking water demands for our people. So it becomes not an easy issue to address with our decision makers. But then there's also that tension of the river being a border area. And there are those agreements that happened on the political level as part of the peace agreements that were signed between the three countries, basically. But what was happening? There was continuous demise, especially when we're talking or addressing the issue of the river itself. There was continuous demise, all because of the unilateral decisions that were happening. So from our efforts and because we were able to work both decision makers aiming at policy change and also empower people with that information, bridging that gap between the people and the decision makers, bringing science into that equation as well, and also the private sector at some point, we were able to really have everyone listen and highlight the importance that these are really important issues that we need to move forward and not wait for the political decisions to really end the conflicts. It's not helping. And these are urgent issues, especially when it comes to our water. Because humans, we all need water as humans, and we cannot wait until a political deal is struck between our decision makers.
At some point, EcoPeace actually reinvented itself, because when EcoPeace was established in '94, we assumed that peace has broken out. We assumed that within these next years, we're going to be able to live in freedom and in friendship very quickly, because that's it. A peace treaty had been signed between Israel and Jordan. The Oslo Accords were signed between Israel and the PLO. Within 5 years, there would be a peace treaty there too, and there would be lots of prosperity. Of course, that's not what happened. And sadly, the peace process derailed. And there was a failure of leadership on all sides that didn't take us forward. And therefore, as a civil society organization, we came to understand, well, we're not going to just wait. We can't wait for our leaders to show leadership. We need to create that leadership from the bottom up. And that's really where we became an environmental peace-building organization. When we originally established ourselves, we were much more a regular environmental organization trying to promote environmental policy. But by the outbreak of the Second Intifada, we'd reinvented ourselves to focus on environmental peace building, understanding that the environment can be an issue that brings us together, that the environment is an issue of common concern, and if we don't solve these issues, then we pay a price. And by working together to solve these issues, we can build relationships, we can build trust. Now, there are those that condemn us until today and come and say, well, we're normalizers. We're ignoring the conflict and we're behaving as if the occupation doesn't exist. We're behaving as if everything is peaceful. We're not. On the contrary, we're coming and saying that we think it's naive to think that our leadership is just someday going to walk in and sign an agreement and peace breaks out. That's not the reality on the ground. They need support. Our leadership is inundated with people on all sides calling for more violence. They tend to be the loudest voices. We bring to the table the messages of reason, of compassion, of urgency, that, and particularly on the issues of the Jordan and on the water, that by solving these issues, we improve people's lives on the ground. And when people are a little bit more comfortable on the ground, when people have enough water to meet their basic needs, they're able to think beyond their particular circumstances and help create that political will for our leadership to make the decisions that we desperately need them to take.
Whenever we can share our experience of what we're doing around engaging people on ground for the importance of really rehabilitating our Jordan River, but also learning from others. And because we have one of our campaigns that focus on the rehabilitation of the Jordan River addresses or is addressed towards faith-based communities, basically. So we needed to, like I said, share, but also learn from others how we can better engage, or how we can help others better engage as well. So that was really an important step for us, and the workshop was a wonderful platform for us to share and learn.
I think the importance of our participation was to show that this is not a theory. This is happening on the ground, and here we had an academic institution with different faith-based organizations around the table, speaking about a vision, and EcoPeace was an example of that vision being implemented on the ground. And that's very important for people to see and understand, because when they see that something is already being applied, then it's easier to move forward on other issues and in other parts of the world. So I think when we heard about the conference being organized, we were really excited, because we understood that we can exemplify how effective this type of work could be. For me, I think the highlight was the depth of detail and understanding of the different faith-based leaders that were there. I was really impressed by the Moroccans and some of the other faith-based leaders who clearly had given great thought about the important role that their respective faith-based traditions could play, from the Abrahamic tradition to ecology and to nature and to the environment. People that had authored different publications and books, and the depth of their learning and understanding that is completely different from us. So we're not a faith-based organization. We're an environmental peace-building organization. So that combination, I think, is always magic. When sort of like-minded people are coming together from very different disciplines, then I do think miracles can take place. And since we're all from the Abrahamic tradition and believe in miracles, it was, I think the conference was a miracle moment in that sense. How quickly it became a community of concerned people. We bring together Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians all the time, and there's always tension. There's always fear of the unknown. There's always a concern as to how the other would react. What was really inspiring about the conference is how quickly that disappeared. That the human side of us all was at the forefront, and people, I think because we were talking about professionals from different fields, they were eager to hear and to listen to the stories of the other, and that made a real difference.
So that's very true. I mean, for one of the few times, I felt welcomed from the beginning, basically, and I felt people wanted to hear from us, wanted to learn from us as well. So that was something. But one other thing that I really found amazing about the conference is that how we, a lot of the participants that were there kept that connection even after the workshop. And I'm just amazed how we're still in contact and, sharing our experiences. That is something that really makes me feel proud that I participated in the workshop.
And we're really excited because we believe that there's going to be a delegation from the conference that's going to join a tour of the Jordan River that we're organizing. And again, it'll give the opportunity for participants from the conference to actually visit and see for themselves, on the one hand, still the natural beauty of the area, but on the other hand, sadly, the demise of the river itself, and hear stories from communities, from people on the ground, and from other faith-based leadership in Jordan, in Palestine, and in Israel that will be attending this conference in February of 2020.
Yes, let's say our religious leaders understand the importance of water in that specific religion. They all do, but they don't understand it, maybe given the circumstances that are happening in our region. They don't understand the scarcity that's happening. So it's important for us to educate them. It's important for us to make that link between the decision makers, because that's where policy will change. And without that policy, we will not be able to move anything or implement any projects on ground. And also the people. They don't necessarily understand. They're always blaming, let's say, especially from a Jordanian, Palestinian context, because water is scarce. And I know this from a personal perspective because I have to go through it. As a Jordanian, I receive water once a week. That I have to store that water in tankers to use that week. But it's different for me because I understand the scarcity issues, but people do not understand that. And when they have to go through all these challenges of not having water, and in some other areas, it's even more challenging of people getting water every 2 weeks, let's say, we educate them with the water reality in our part of the world, and in order not to really play that blame game and just blame the government of what's happening. And with that, we bring a holistic picture for everyone to understand the reality, but also to understand the important role of each of us and what we need to do in order to really make those necessary changes happen.
The real world is a tough world. It's a world where we're condemned, we're seen as the enemy, we're seen as sort of spies working for the other side. And coming into the conference and meeting all the participants, it's a very safe place. I think that was a strong feeling that we could speak honestly, we could speak about our success, but we could also speak about our challenges without being condemned. I mean, I think the fact that we all came together from the 3 Abrahamic traditions, clearly, the people that came together were coming with an open mind. Otherwise, they would have refused to meet the different Abrahamic traditions. So clearly they were coming with a very open mind. So very quickly, it was a safe place to speak about our concerns, to speak about our success, and sadly, that's becoming less and less prevalent. We see a growth of extremism. I think on all sides. We see it globally, by the type of political leadership that's being elected in various parts of the world. And we see the voice of the divisive becoming louder and louder, and that makes it so much harder. And that's why these types of events are so critical, why they're so important, because it's critical to create these safe places where we can strategize, where we can firstly get to know each other, but then most importantly, to strategize and to have our voices expanded, have our ability strengthened to reach out to the broader public, to the media, to decision makers, so that people can understand there is another voice. There is a voice of common compassion that can make change on the ground happen for the benefit of all people, and not just one side or a few sides.
That was something really touching for me, because we're towards the end, we do face a lot of challenges. I have to deal with challenges on, I say, a 5-minute basis when I'm back in the office, back in Jordan. Being in that workshop gave me that feeling of, I can breathe again. I have someone that's really listening to me. And like I always hear back in our region that we give people hope, I felt those participants gave me hope. Not because we were only talking about theories or methodologies, but we were able to hear each other and say, oh, this would work. I'm learning from you. Let's do this together. That was amazing. But to also feel that I got to really not be part of only bringing participants from the region, Jordanians, Israelis, Palestinians, and standing there being that person that has to mediate, that has to build that dialogue among them, but to also to feel free as Yana to be able to sit with others, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and we were sharing, like you said, we were taking pieces of those bread and sharing together and listening to each other about things that I was telling them about me being a Muslim and how I live on a daily basis, and hearing from my Jewish friends and the Christian friends. That really brought another, taste to the whole issue, and it gave me hope. When we produced our faith-based campaign, and it was announced in a conference, a wonderful conference back in 2011, I was personally really worried how it's all going to happen. And we, as part of that campaign, we produced that covenant talking about the importance of the river, what's happening to the river, and how we can all contribute to changing the demise of the Jordan River itself. I felt like, okay, I don't know if we're going to have anyone sign it at that point. And I was shocked for the first time that we had politicians there at the conference, religious leaders, different participants wanting to come together and sign. And that was the first time. But then I said, okay, we've been doing and signing the covenant for some years now. But at that workshop, I was, again, wonderfully surprised to see that people were enthusiastic. They wanted to help. They, even if it started with that, putting their signature on that covenant, I was overwhelmed with joy to see them all wanting to come and really sign as part of not only illustrating a signature on that piece of paper, which we have put in our offices, but to know that it's part of them wanting to really help move things for the future.
The covenant is a negotiated document. The covenant was authored by Muslims, Jews, and Christians together. We'd produced a guide for Christians and the Jordan River, for Muslims and the Jordan River, and for Jews and the Jordan River. And the experts that we had involved from the three Abrahamic faiths in writing those guides helped us also co-author the covenant. So the covenant came from a deep understanding of the different faith-based leaders or experts that were involved in our work, and it's clearly struck a nice balance, because the three different Abrahamic traditions identify with the words of that covenant. And therefore we see it as a powerful tool. On the one hand, it appears like it's just signing, but it is making a statement. And it's making a statement that we believe is followed up with responsibility. So that we know that different faith-based communities all over the world, we've gone further, we've trained tour guides that bring pilgrims from all over the world to the River Jordan. And we know that the different faith-based communities then use the guides and then use the covenant as a means to take the story of the Jordan back to their specific community in Philadelphia or in Seattle or in Berlin or in Timbuktu. That's the strength. It's taking the message of what the Jordan River represents to the hearts and minds of people wherever they might be.